Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Crimson Raven and welcome back to Ziggurat. I haven't recorded a tutorial for a while, but I'm getting back into it now. And yeah, I've decided to do one today. So today, we're going to be looking at Rigel the Acrobat. Just going to go in really quickly. Most of the footage, most of the in-game footage that you're going to see is going to be pre-recorded. But I'm still going to show off a little bit with him. So Rigel is a pretty important character to me because he's the first character in Ziggurat where I really have been able to go all the way to Cepheus on floor 5 in normal mode and finish the game. He's the first character that I've ever been able to finish the game with, and he has a very, very particular play style that you have to respect. Because he's tricky. He's tricky, but he can be extremely good. Rigel is one of the 3 weapon specialist classes. He's an acrobat, he's the staff specialist. So, to start with, let's see what he has. He has 100 health. He has 100 health, which is normal health. And he scales just like the basic, every basic character. He scales at 5 HP per level up. He also starts at 100 green mana, which is normal pool, but he has a couple perks that help him mana wise. Both his blue and his orange mana start at 50, which is half. So you're gonna have to be kind of careful with how you use your weapons that are not staves. Let's look at his basic perks. So, let's see. Excellent mobility, decent staff skills. The rest of his attacks have a slower rate of fire. He has pretty bad rate of fire with his blue and orange weapon as well as his wand. But if we look at it right now, his wand actually has slightly faster rate of fire than Argo's. And if we shoot afar, it does have a little bit of spread, but not too much. It's relatively accurate. His secondary is some shotgun type of attack, relatively high rate of fire, and it hits pretty hard. It can be useful to if you're ever in a bind. He starts with 30 purple mana, which is kind of standard. He burns through it quite quickly. His 1 mana usage is very bad. So let's look at the perks that he has. He has Staff Mastery, increase your staff attack rate, and Staff Proficiency, which reduce his mana usage. He doesn't have any form of regen whatsoever in his kit, which is why you gotta be pretty careful in how you use him. Haste is incredible for him. Rigel is a speedster. So his playstyle is very, very, very different from Algarab, which was the subject of our last tutorial, who was like a slow, plowing, really brawling kind of character. Rigel needs a lot more finesse, and speed is everything for him. You really, which is why you're really going to want to favor weapons that have a low ceiling in terms of needed accuracy. Like right now, there's 2 staffs here. We got the Gemini staff right ahead of us, and I'm having Divine Wrath in my hands. With most characters, I would take Divine Wrath. I would keep Divine Wrath because it has an insane damage output, but it requires a fair amount of accuracy, and it doesn't have that much of a fire rate. The Gemini staff, on the other hand, has much wider projectiles, which means less accuracy needed, does have a good fire rate, does have a very good damage output as well, which means that Gemini staff would be the better weapon for Rigel, and I would go for that. Now I'm gonna cut to some pre-recorded footage so that you guys can see a little bit more what I'm talking about when we're talking about Rigel. So here we are. I'm currently playing Rigel in a hard mode, and the first weapon pickup that I got in the first room was Arcane Storm, which is a very, very good weapon for Rigel, because again, as I said before, low ceiling for accuracy, you don't need to aim it all that much, and it has a stun, which basically allows you to abuse your speed advantage even more, thanks to haste. Now, in this room, this is a special room where the ground enemies do a shockwave upon death, and I'm not very good at timing my jumps for this, but Arcane Storm does allow me to take out a lot of the enemies from afar without having to aim too much, which allows me to kite around quite a bit more. So as we go to another fight here, where I'm fighting a bunch of mushrooms, another tactic that you want to use with Rigel is, again, you really want to abuse your speed advantage. So one thing that you're going to see me doing towards this fight is, you see, I'm trying to stay relatively far because Arcane Storm has good range, and I'm going to run out of mana for it quite soon. I'm going to start using my wand, and there's a lot of projectiles flying around from these mushrooms, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through them and trigger their close range attack, because I am fast enough to get away from it just as they start triggering it. So as soon as there's a little bit too many projectiles going around, you see I'm going close to them, forcing them to trigger their close range attacks that I can get away from, because I have enough speed to do so. As I said before, the Arcane Storm is a very, very good weapon for him. Obviously, if we're looking at spells, homing spells are actually very, very good with him. I'm talking Skull of Xanatos, the Enchanted Butterflies, Wraith Rings, Bloodlust Needles. I think that's all of them. These are weapons that you definitely should favor, because that means you can kite without really having to aim. You just shoot in their general direction and they die. Another tactic that you really want to use here, well, is basically, because you don't have any sort of regen, at least to start with, your staff is going to be your main boss fight weapon. So you want to hoard your green mana as much as possible. If you can avoid using it altogether before the boss fights, you should. And that is exactly what I'm doing here, which is why I'm using my wand, I'm using my spell, but you're barely going to see me using my staff until the boss fight. Because I need that mana. I really need that mana, and I need to be able to burst down the bosses as fast as I can, because Rigel is pretty flimsy, and you rely on speed and agility a lot more than tankiness to survive and get through fights. Another thing, because Rigel is really agile, you're going to be able to abuse room geometry quite well, but for that, map awareness is very, 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 very important. There is quite a few ways, especially in this room that we're in right now, where you can start abusing your room geometry and the way rooms are built. There's a bunch of props. That rock in the middle of the room is very, very useful for, especially if you encounter like carrots in this room. See, you can jump on it exactly just like I did there and snipe from there. There is also ledges on the side of the room that you can use. I'm actually going to turn around here to show it back, because I just thought about it while I was playing. And so you can come back and abuse it using this, and if you're encountering carrots, you can also, or smaller enemies, this ledge here makes you very hard to get for smaller ground-based enemies, which can really give you an advantage in a lot of room. These ledges are almost in every room. And you really, really should make sure to take advantage of it whenever you can. So now I think, at this point of the footage, I'm up for the boss fight. And as you can see, that is when I'm going to start taking out my staff. And I'm just going to, it's going to be Sir Arthur, and I'm just going to walk over him, basically. Because I have so much speed that I can just strafe around him. And he's, unless I get caught into the terrain, see, I show another ledge here that is really, really good to use. But yeah, I can strafe around him basically all the time. And unless I get caught into the terrain anywhere in one of those pillars or the torches or anything, he just can't touch me. And look at how much damage I'm doing with my staff. And even the eagle staff is not the best staff for him. It has a decent fire rate, but not that great. And it has a fairly high ceiling for accuracy. The projectiles are pretty small, and they're not great. I would have preferred either the Gemini staff, or you go the other way around with high fire rate. Like the Eye of Twilight is insane. He doesn't have any... Yeah, I show off how happy I am to get Bloodlust on this fight, because again, no health regen, so any form of it that you can get is great. It is awesome, and you want it in any way, shape, or form. So whether it is Wrecking Ball, Bloodlust, or even just the Scavenger route to get more potions. I get a Magma Rifle here, which is going to be very useful for me, because explosive weapons, you got to be careful not to explode yourself. But I can show off another way to use some weapons that have higher ceiling for accuracy than I would like. So basically, you can see that I'm kiting around and then stopping for about half a second while I shoot to make sure that I don't miss my shot. And yeah, I'm missing quite a few times here. But you can see that even here, when I really don't want to miss, like, I can just stop for a bit, shoot, and then restart kiting whenever possible. So that way, I am just really trying to abuse positioning with this weapon instead of speed, which is another way to go with it. So even you could use some kind of sniping weapon and use that kind of playstyle instead, where you're just kiting around, getting distance, and then stopping for a second, sniping something, and then moving again. It is a possibility, although it's a lot harder, especially if you get stuck in smaller rooms. It is a lot riskier of a playstyle, but it can be used depending on the weapons that you get dealt. But the Magma Rifle is not a weapon that I would favor. And later on in the footage, I actually get the occasion to switch it out for a grenade. And grenades are very, very, very good weapons for Rigel, because again, you just throw them and forget it and keep dodging. So yeah, as we run back the end of this fight here, we can see that I'm using my Arcane Storm because again, I don't have to aim it. And as I level up, I get either Haste or Talented Alchemist. Because I already have Talented Alchemist level 1, the possibility was level 2. I decided to go for Haste because, again, speed advantage. I just need to kite around. I just need to be able to get distance between me and these freaking flying skulls and whatever other enemy I have to face. Here, I have to, because I ran out of blue mana, I have to start using the sniping playstyle, where you could see me stop, aim, shoot, and then dodge. Another thing with a lot of these weapons that you can get dealt with, because really with Rigel, your approach is very much, it's spray and pray. It's really just put as much damage in front of you as you can without having to aim it too much. So you should really, especially with the alchemy weapons, usually the secondary fire tends to be a bigger area of damage that you want to abuse, especially with this kind of fight that I'm going through here, where a lot of enemies are kind of grouped up. And I'm also trying to abuse room geometry and props with these arches kind of shielding me and preventing them to jump on me while I can snipe through them. So here again we go. I take out my staff again because it's time for another boss fight against Polako, the shaman. And again, I just abuse my mobility and the damage output I can have with my staff, and I just annihilate this guy. Because of how fast I am, I can just dodge every attack that he has. And then I even start using Arcane Storm on him just to try to keep my mana levels a little bit higher. And you can see the kind of range that I am at, because if I got too far away from him, he would have started spawning carrots, which would have been a problem. Which, actually, no, it wouldn't have been that much of a problem because I can kite around. But even then, I'd rather not. So I stayed kind of mid-range and just annihilated him because I could dodge everything he could throw at me. So knowing your enemies with Rigel is really, really important, because positioning is of the utmost key, as well as abusing your speed to reposition yourself constantly. So as we go into the Cursed Cathedral, as you can see, I have a Fire Weaver grenade that I decide to use here, because much, much, much lower ceiling for accuracy that is needed to be able to take advantage of this weapon, and I just start throwing fire everywhere. Obviously, the Shaman was my main target here because of his damage buff, but I just start, throwing zone damage and AoE damage all over the place. Mana regen, especially for your staff. Anything that will enhance your staff is something you want to take with Rigel. He's a staff specialist after all. You have to abuse that. And as we finish up this fight, I think... As we finish up this fight, I believe we can afford to move on. Yeah, I get a new spell here, which is the Hellish Ember. And as soon as I realize it's the Hellish Ember, I switch back to the Arcane Storm. Accuracy ceiling. Accuracy ceiling is really something that you have to think about every single time you get dealt a weapon, especially if it's a weapon of a class that you already have. The one weapon you're going to want to use is the one that needs the least accuracy to be effective. So, except maybe for your staff, and even then, what you really want is a spray and pray approach. It is really just about spreading damage all over the place with you being able to run away from whatever could hurt you. So you want to run around in the most erratic patterns that you can, while not having to aim too much to deal damage. And if you get caught like I just did in room geometry, you're probably going to take damage. You just want to try to minimize that. So, yeah, I think that's going to be it for the in-game footage. We're going to switch back to the armory, and so we can speak about perks for a bit. Okay, so here we are in the armory, so we can speak about a few perks that you either want to pick or avoid with Rigel. So, let us start with Ape. Okay, so you have a couple of routes that you can go with Rigel, but all of them are pretty much in the same mentality. So either you go to scavenger routes, anything and everything, first priority, very, very first priority, is making your staff even better than what you already have. You already start with staff scavenger. If you get it, like, it's probably something that you want. And since you don't have any regen of any kind, mana regen, obviously, if you get 2 mana regen options, staff is best of all. If not, then any other mana regen is always good. Health regen is very important because Rigel is pretty flimsy. He doesn't have a lot of health, and you rely a lot more on speed and agility to survive rather than tankiness. So anything that can make him a little bit tankier without slowing him down is going to be something you want to grab. So obviously, life awareness, always good. War cry, always good. Bloodlust, insanely good. As long as you can grab every pickup. One perk that you really want to consider if you see it is Scaredy Cat. Because if you get hit, you get a massive speed increase, which allows you to create distance, and then allows you to basically kite enemies faster, especially if you're in a big room. That can give you a massive advantage so that you can start either using AoEs or sniping around to be able to get rid of, thin out the crowd a little bit. I'm thinking mostly about on floor 4, very often, you're going to get Brunhilde, the Carrot Princess, as a boss. And she spawns a shit ton of carrots that are going to run after you. Scaredy Cat will actually allow you to outrun these carrots. Outrun her, because Brunhilde is very fast. And it will give you a massive advantage, because you get hit once, you can outrun her for a while. Just damage her. Just lay on every single bit of damage that you can on her, and then just keep kiting. So Scaredy Cat, extremely strong on Rigel. If you see that one, pick it. Just pick it. The only thing that I would say would prevent me from picking Scaredy Cat if I see it would probably be some form of HP regen. And even then, not all perks are equal when it comes to health regen. I would pick it over Warcry. I would probably pick Bloodlust before Scaredy Cat, but that's pretty much the only case. Let us see what else we have. When it comes to amulets, obviously healing, always strong. Cheetah, speed. No explanation needed here. What else? Okay, any perks that involve losing health in any way, shape, or form, avoid at all costs. As I said before, Rigel is pretty flimsy. So losing health in any way, losing max health especially, is going to be very, very bad for you. Losing speed in any way is going to be very, very bad for you as well. Losing damage on your staff is also quite bad. I'm thinking about any perks that give you either extra damage on alchemy or extra damage on spells while making your staff weaker is something you want to avoid altogether as well. Bunny Hopper is actually quite fun with Rigel. You already have a shit ton of speed, and you get even more while you're jumping, and you're going to favor low accuracy weapons. So Bunny Hopper is actually very, very, very strong on him, and is something that you really want to consider. Blood Rights. Blood Rights, as I said before, is a very, very risky pick. It can pay off on him, but I would only choose it in situations where you already have a good amount of health regen in your kit. So if you get Bloodlust level 2 or 3 or more, I would go for that. If you get Warcry level 3 or more, I would pick up Blood Rights. Especially with Warcry, because, you know, as soon as you get into the next fight, you're already regenning a fair bit. Or if you have a healing amulet, so that you can heal back some of the health that you lose by picking blood rights. What else? What else? What else? Lightweight is a bit weird, because here, as I said before, like, you're sacrificing health to get speed, which in Rigel's case might be useful, but I would avoid it because it's max health and it's 20% of your max health. So unless you have a shit ton of health, you probably do not want to pick lightweight despite the speed advantage. You need a backup plan if you're ever stuck in a very small room. Overload is something you should avoid at all costs, because health potions are very important. You don't have any health regen. Revenge. Now, Revenge is pretty much a must pick for Rigel, because the stunning shockwave slows every enemy around you, which means peel, which means you can create distance, which means you can abuse your speed even more. Revenge, must pick. You see it, you get it. Let's just keep scrolling down a little bit. Mana regen is always huge. Acheron's Cube, in terms of alchemy weapon, is probably something you want to grab. It's very, very good. Flame Mortar is very good on him. You got to be careful, though, because it does create some fire zones that you have to avoid. But it creates such a massive fire zone that if you get a lot of small enemies in a room, you can just kite them through the fire, and that would kill off a lot of them. Bit like I did with the Fireweaver Bomb at the very end of the game footage that we saw earlier. Bloodlust, must pick. Dark Pact is to avoid at all cost, because it's a max health. It's a max health 50% reduction. It's massive. You do not want that. Brute is probably something that you don't want, because you kind of want to get as much scaling as possible. You want to get a lot of XP on Rigel. Even though his early game is pretty good, you got to be careful about anything that would reduce experience gain on him. Elder, avoid at all costs. Avoid at all costs. You get a lot of mana regen, but you get health reduction and speed reduction, which are the two main things you want on Rigel. Poison Aura, extremely strong on him, because, as I said before, with a lot of enemies, you want to trigger their close range attacks and then run away from it. In this case, you trigger the close range attack, you run away from it, and they're poisoned. So they take damage on top of that. That is perfect. Poison Aura, must pick. As I said before, Spell Affinity and Alchemy Affinity, things that you want to avoid, because it decreases your staff damage. Simple as that. Torture is very good if you have any kind of stun in either your weapons, or a Revenge, Shockwave, or Stun Amulet. There's the Lightning Amulet that causes a bunch of enemies to take damage and get stunned. Torture would make the stun even longer. That would be a pretty good pickup for Rigel. It really depends. Torture is really dependent on whatever else you have, though. It really depends on the weapons you get. It depends on the weapons you get, and it depends on the other perks that you get, or amulet. Dark Cannon is a very good weapon on him, because it's a set it and forget it kind of thing. It creates a dark hole that damages enemies over time. And since you're kiting, your style is you want to be kiting enemies around. So if you can create those damage zones to run enemies through, usually it's effective. So with Dark Cannon, good idea to have. Anguish Cannon's also a pretty good weapon to have because it's a massive projectile. Catapult of Doom, same thing. Big wall of damage that you can have ahead of you, because you're going to be backpedaling most of the time. Power of Heart. If you ever get the choice of any staff in Power of Heart, I honestly believe that the Power of Heart is the ultimate best weapon you can have in the game if you're playing Rigel. Because the Power of Heart has an insane rate of fire. It does a ton of damage, and the projectiles bounce everywhere to the point where you can literally flood a room with projectiles. And they do a lot of damage. So basically you just keep firing everywhere while running away from enemies. Just avoid damage and keep firing. That's it. That's game one for you. Like, any weapon will be less effective in Rigel's hand than the Power of Heart. This is the dream. If you get that, this is the dream, and the game is yours to fuck up at that point, because you should go very, very far in your run if you get the Power of Heart. And I think that covers most of it for Rigel. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. If you have any feedback as well, I would gladly take it. And yeah, I'm going to wrap it up right here. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the video. I'm Crimson Raven. I'll see you soon.